Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee and Headlines. This is our daily get together here live on Facebook, where we exchange headlines and comments and topics and questions and suggestions about how to have a better life here in Puerto Vallarta as a local English-speaking community. If this is the first time you join us, my name is Paco, and you can let us know that you're new by writing the word new in your comments, and we will be so very happy to give you a welcome. Today is Tuesday, November 17th, and we have a bunch of interesting things to talk about, some of which will make sense and some of which will not make a lot of sense. And I'm referring to some of the comments that we got from our governor, Enrique Alfaro. I took some notes on his... Okay, sirens, lovely. I took some notes on his announcement from yesterday, and some of it made a lot of sense, some of it didn't make a lot of sense. We're going to try to break it down today and see what is exactly going on in our neck of the woods. First, let me start by seeing who's here and who's not here. It's always great to say hello to so many friends that join us on a regular basis. It's always wonderful to see you. And of course, if you have any important questions or comments that you would like to share with us and you want to make sure that we tackle them during the broadcast, please add the letter Q to the beginning of your comment so that we can make sure that we include them in the show. Let's see. Oh my goodness, everybody's here. Even Kathleen made it. Kathleen's here for the live show. Lovely. It's great to see you, Kathleen. You were a big part of our conversation yesterday because of your new shop, and we are very happy. Oh my God, what is this about? Paco, your package will be ready for pickup in 36 hours. Oh my goodness. I'm intrigued. Oh my goodness, it's so great to see you all. It's snowing elsewhere in the world. Who would have thunk it? It's a little chilly down here, but definitely not snow. Anyhow, we have a lot of things to cover today. We have news about COVID-19. We have a question from a member of the audience. I want to talk again about the survey, and we have some music. We're going to talk about one of the most beautiful songs in the Latin American Spanish song repertoire, and I'm going to hope that you enjoy it. Paco loves packages. Of course I do, starting with yours, Gay Off. I don't think I'm being indiscreet by saying this, but there's, okay, a little totally useless bit of information, but you know how women, you have contraptions that raise your breasts and they make them look pretty or not pretty. Well, some guys, no, I'm not even going to go there. Never mind. Let's just say that pants fit some guys better than others. And I said to Gav more than once, you need to take me shopping because pants look good on you. That's all I'm going to say. Let's not even go there. I went there, but never mind. We're not going to go there. Let's go to the news because we have a lot of news to talk about today. Boom. Okay, so the governor has spoken. Governor Enrique Alfaro gave us an update yesterday yes, I went there, Gayoff. I'm sorry. The governor gave us yesterday another update of the moving forward scenario, and it was sketchy. It was important, but it was sketchy. I took some notes and I'm going to whip them out because I want to tell you what I got from the address. And then we're going to talk about what other people reported. First of all, the basics of this new period is no tolerance. Everybody needs to abide by the rules. That's the first thing that the governor said. Number one, instead of coming up with guidelines for different types of businesses, the capacity control in all businesses is going to be 50%. 50% capacity and or one person for every 4 square meters inside or 2 square meters outside. Number two, face masks are obligatory. Mind you, he said obligatory, not mandatory. There is no law in Jalisco that would get you in jail or fined or otherwise treated by the authorities if you don't wear a face mask. But he makes them obligatory. He makes hygiene and sanitizing important, and also recommends quarantining for active and suspicious cases. Nothing new. Number three, a third element that is going to be very important in this new period is municipal collaboration for inspection and vigilance, which means that the state government is going to rely on the different municipalities to provide feedback as to how individual municipalities are doing. And number four, strengthening epidemiological monitoring with random testing during the weekends. This is something that the government is going to continue to do. Set up random checkpoints throughout the states where people are going to be checked for COVID-19, and we are going to see how that works out for us here in Puerto Vallarta. More specifically, something that continues to be a part of the guidelines is that no gatherings are allowed, and we're trying to avoid long exposure times, he said. The government is also going to favor activities that have to do with outdoors, things that go on at parks and forests and so forth and so on. No concentration of seniors or population at risk. Concerts, patron saint parties, and meetings where people gather tightly are canceled. And this is one of the first ones that I thought it was a little sketchy, because how do you define what a concert is as opposed to something that is just playing at a venue? There are no specific guidelines as of yet. Also, strict access guidelines at supermarkets and businesses through obligatory face mask use, hand washing, and wide aisles wherever you go. So these measures, more than anything else, according to what the governor said, are essential in determining whether students can gradually return to school in January. And while we've been thinking about business and revenue and safety and so forth and so on, we failed to remember, or we failed to take into account, that the fact that students are not having an actual education at a school is becoming a reason of concern here in the state of Jalisco. And then he also talked about such things as nightlife and such. It's going to be determined on a per municipality basis. So this is something else that was interesting to hear, because in Guadalajara, apparently bars are still not allowed to open, and yet here in Puerto Vallarta, things are different. He's also mentioning something along the lines of no gatherings at home for the holidays. This makes perfect sense. And of course, the posada period is coming in December. Posadas being those very traditional parties that we hold when we're getting close to Christmas. The governor doesn't want any of that. And at the end of his official announcement, the first question that came from a member of the press was, what about Puerto Vallarta? And he said that the same criteria applies to Puerto Vallarta. But again, it's a little weird, because Puerto Vallarta has been sort of kind of dancing to its own tune for a while. And I don't know if this is this is our own mayor or the governor is aware of it or not. I cannot really comment on that. So again, I know that you probably come here looking for very specific credible information, and it's just a little weird this time around. According to one of the local sources that interpreted the announcement from the governor, Puerto Vallarta will have more liberty to control the capacity of its venues, but it will be evaluated every 15 days. So, what exactly does this mean? Who is going to evaluate what or where or when is still a little bit sketchy. Now, the good news is that for all of us as individuals, nothing has changed. The guidelines continue to be the same guidelines that we know and that we've repeating over and over and over. We want to wear a face mask. We want to keep a safe distance. We want to stay home whenever possible. If we have symptoms, we want to act on them quickly. And number 5, we wash our hands whenever and wherever possible and as frequently as possible. So this is pretty much what we have from the governor. Let me see if you have any specific questions that we can address at this point, and we can continue with the rest of the broadcast. Good mornings, good mornings, good mornings. Let's see. Okay, comments about gay of slangs. Good heavens. William decides to be a little shady. If I say the governor being sketchy, I'm shocked. I say, well, William, in all defense, again, it is so easy to have critical commentary about our authorities. But, would you want to be the governor? Would anybody want to have to make these important decisions? It's got to be very, very difficult for them. But for us, Pilar has broken it down to the basic fundamental element. Wear a mask. Thank you. I mean, it's definitely what we can and should do. Does anyone know if Costco is still only letting one family member in per card? I believe that is correct. I was at Costco just a few days ago, and I saw a bunch of people waiting outside. So I imagine that would be the case. Let's see. What about bars with music? Can you dance? Well, again, I don't know that I can tell you what the specific guidelines are for Puerto Vallarta here. But Angelica, would you actually, I'm actually going to ask you, Angelica, but I'm going to ask everybody and anybody that is in the audience, are we going to wait for the government to tell us what we can or cannot do? Or are we going to look at the big picture, get the information in, and make decisions for ourselves? Nothing has changed. There is no vaccine. The virus is still out there. We gather and it'll increase. We isolate and it'll decrease. So can you dance? The question for me is, do you want to dance? I mean, do you want to walk into a venue that is crowded and stuff like that and you're going to dance? I'm not going to dance. So again, common sense and the self-care, the part in which we all dive in and do what we have to do to take care of ourselves is really important here. You can't have large gatherings, but wearing masks are not mandatory. Again, Stephanie, there is a big divide in the country. There are some states that have started to make it mandatory. As we will see in a moment, we'll see that our president doesn't think that is a good idea. And there is division on this. Let's see. Let me continue with the headline so that some of this can make more sense to you. Let's see. This one has to do with the fact that when the government was doing random testing in Puerto Vallarta's airport, they found people with COVID. So again, my hunch is that the government is going to continue to put random test sites throughout the state. And based on that, they're going to try to get a sense as to how the virus is behaving in different places. But again, I think the government is trying to figure out the best possible way to do this as they move forward. As I mentioned just a second ago, in Aguascalientes is a place where the things are a little harsher because of the rate of COVID that they have. A dry law has been decreed, and the obligatory use of face masks has also been established in this state, in the state of Aguascalientes. On the other hand, our president, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, feels that imposing face masks on the population is authoritarian. And he insists that as a president, he's not going to call for obligatory or by law use of face masks, and that is just the opinion of the president. Needless to say, he cannot rule over individual states. So if a state decides that they want to go ahead and make things a little bit more strict, a state can do that. Meanwhile, we've learned in the last couple of days that there's a brand new vaccine, this one made by a pharmaceutical called Moderna. Moderna, how do you like my pronunciation? Moderna. This one is more efficient than the one that was announced by Pfizer just last week or the week before. Of course, the vaccines are radically different in design. The Pfizer vaccine requires very, very cold temperatures for storage, and Mexico does not have the proper sub-frozen facilities to store these vaccines. So the Pfizer vaccine is not practical for Mexico. For Mexico to be able to use that vaccine, Mexico would have to invest considerable amounts of money in refrigerated facilities to store the vaccines. The Moderna vaccine is different because it does not require the very cold temperatures to store it, but it does require two separate dosages, one at one point and then the other one the following month. So authorities do feel that while they don't have to worry about storage, they have to worry about people actually coming back for the second part of the vaccine, and that they fear may not be what people choose to do. So the efficiency of these vaccines, if and when they come to us, literally, will have a lot to do with how much we understand how they work and how people, the population, is actually committing to the whole procedure as they should. The last important headline that I have, I believe, yes, before we move into more leisurely stuff, comes from the highway between Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. 12 people died in an explosion of a gas-carrying truck. 12 people died, and the highway from Tepic to Guadalajara is closed right now. It continues to be closed, and this is around the town of Jala. So if you were driving to Guadalajara down the toll highway, you would be affected by this. So if you're having thoughts about going to Guadalajara in the near future, please keep this in mind, as you may not be able to get through to the other side. Let me take a quick look at your final comments here, and then we move on to the weather. Let's see. Colima also has a mandatory face mask law. Yeah, there are now several states that have them, and we'll have to see, how the rest of the country moves and in what specific direction. Wondering about the number of people that will actually want to be the first to be vaccinated, not talking about the volunteers for testing. I would be vaccinated. If they tell me it's been reliable and it's passed the tests and it is advised for the population, I would certainly be vaccinated. I would definitely do it. I thought the Pfizer vaccine was 2 doses. I probably read that wrong. I think you actually read that correctly, Mari. But the issue here, as far as Mexico is concerned, has less to do with the number of doses that you have to take, and it has more to do with the fact that if the vaccines are not stored at sub-zero temperatures, they lose their efficiencies. Are churches requiring their parishioners to wear a mask during church service? I certainly hope so. But I cannot answer that as a fact. Let's see. Blam, blam, blim, blam, blam. Dana, I'd like to see conversation about the Trump family and U.S. politics elsewhere. We've chosen to not talk about news that have something to do with other countries here. This forum, this space, is for discussing our connection with Puerto Vallarta, and I ask that you kindly keep this in mind. Let's see. Let's see. If the mayor had a plan to pass out free masks in the city, might that not help? I really couldn't tell you if how much of the issue, Christy, has to do with people having masks or having the will to wear them. I really couldn't tell you. Anyhow, I've caught up with your comments. Let us take a quick look at the weather and take it from there. Okay, the weather tells us that it is 27 degrees, feels like 28. It's 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity is low, 57%, which is wonderful. No chance of rain. The weather asks, why aren't hurricanes named after vegetables? I think that's a cute question. The weather forecast for today, humid through the day with winds from the east, a high temperature of 31. Tomorrow, humid through the day, high temperature of 33, but somehow it doesn't bother me as much because the air feels drier. And then on Thursday, humid through the day as well. And that is what we have as far as the weather is concerned. I do have a question that came in yesterday from someone that sent me a question privately. And usually when questions are sent privately and they have important answers that everybody can take advantage of, I choose to answer them here. And the question was in Spanish, and it said, "Hi, Paco, I love your show. I feel so close to Vallarta. You managed to bring me into Puerto Vallarta. Let me tell you that we just purchased a home in Puerto Vallarta that we have not been able to enjoy because of the pandemic, but we're praying to God that we will be able to get over the adversity. And my question is the following. Can you give me a guideline? I don't know if you have a video or such that can tell us about the budget of living in Puerto Vallarta." So the question is, how much is it to live in Puerto Vallarta? And I cannot think of a more interesting, important, and difficult to answer question, because the guideline has so much to do with our own quality of life, level of life, expectation, and what we're used to. I mean, if you are used to a certain quality of life and certain types of products and certain types of comforts at home, it's going to be a lot more expensive. I find that a lot of people that come from north of the border, and this is a very general statement, so I don't mean to create a big debate here. I find that a lot of people that come from north of the border have higher quality of standards, expectations, and thus spend more money in their everyday budget. Whereas us here in Mexico that are used to living in Mexican neighborhoods and living like Mexicans, I mean, we have different guidelines. So it's really a difficult one to ask. If you have specific questions about neighborhoods and so forth and so on, that might be easier to answer. I can certainly talk about how much it costs me to live, but again, it really varies from person to person, from neighborhood to neighborhood, from expectation to expectation. So do forgive me if we're not able to tackle this a little bit more precisely. Moving on with headlines, we learned that Jaime Cuevas, the mayor of Bahia de Banderas, or Banderas Bay, is saying, well, our municipality is the leader in having access to the beaches for everyone, blee, 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 blah, blah, blah. And that makes me wonder, well, if Bahia de Banderas is the leader, then why are there so many complaints taking place in Punta de Mita and places around the northern part of the bay for people that are not able to access the beach? So is Bahia de Banderas a leader in access to the beach or not? It remains to be seen. This was a long weekend here in Puerto Vallarta. Monday was a day off, so we saw a large number of people from Guadalajara coming to Puerto Vallarta. This is going to be the norm, I suppose, in these longer weekends that we get. I can imagine that this brought some prosperity to the city. I don't know exactly how much, but it is good to see that a lot of people were in town. And the last headline that I want to share with you before we break into our musical segment has to do with this movie that we recommended a few weeks ago, I'm No Longer Here, which you can watch on Netflix. It's a Mexican film that has now been selected to represent Mexico at the Academy Awards. And the film has to do with a gang of kids from Monterrey that enjoy cumbia, a certain type of Latin rhythm music. And all of a sudden, one of the kids witnesses something that he shouldn't have witnessed, and he ends up having to leave the country and end up in New York City. And I'm not going to ruin the rest of the movie. But again, this is something that you may want to watch if you like to watch films before the Academy Awards come around. Let me take a quick look at your comments, and then we talk about music. Let's see. The weather in Vallarta is refreshing, absolutely. Passing out masks in my county really helped out COVID-19. You cannot enter a business without one. Well, you cannot enter a business without one down here. That continues to be the case. And if I didn't make that clear earlier, I apologize. You must be wearing a mask if you are going to be entering a business. Let's see. Trisha has a great blog with detailed costs of living. Again, I think that might be a starting point for some, but as Angelica's saying, it all depends on your lifestyle. You know, if you like to go out, if you like to spend a lot on disposable stuff, you know, it is very, very different for everyone. Let's see. Corina recommends the film we just mentioned. This is wonderful. And Brian asks, is it streaming? Yes, it is available on Facebook. I mean, not on Facebook, on Netflix, where you can also enjoy The Crown. If you're not watching The Crown yet, you should be watching The Crown. It is really, really spectacular. So we've gotten into the final segment of the show, and now we are going to talk about music. I have been suggesting that there are a number of songs out there that you may want to become acquainted because they are songs other than the ones you always hear. They're not La Bamba, they're not Bésame Mucho, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to continue to do that. And today, we're going to tackle a song with huge historical significance. And this is none other than Te Recuerdo Amanda, composed by Chilean composer Victor Jara in 1961. We're going to tackle this beautiful song today. And if you know it, then say nothing about it. If you don't know it, then continue to pay attention. Te Recuerdo Amanda is a love song, but it is also a political anthem. It deals with the precarious conditions under which factory workers that used to work in Chile around the 60s had to deal with, the precarious conditions, and the 5-minute breaks that were allowed, only 5 minutes, for them to be able to, well, take a break. And this particular song deals with two characters, Amanda and her boyfriend Manuel, who worked at a factory, and how the 5 minutes that they were able to spend with one another made such a big difference. Now, before we get into this song, we have to get into some kind of social and historical context so that we can understand. And we begin with talking about who was Victor Jara, and then we have to talk about what was going on in Chile during the 1960s. This will help a great deal to get a good sense as to what the song is about. Well, Victor Jara was born in Chile in 1932 into a peasant background. He used to be, he and his family used to live in a farm where they had nothing, no belongings, no nothing, and they had to work since they were kids. His mother used to sing, and it was she who inspired him to become a musician. Meanwhile, his father was just a farmer. Um, as a teenager, he entered a seminary where he learned Gregorian chant. He learned about music, but he left 2 years later because he felt he lacked the religious dedication, and he then decided to enroll in military service. After that was over, in his early 20s, he joined the Chile University Chorus, where he participated in important stagings such as the staging of Carmina Burana. And he was 24 years of age when he joined a theater company. From this point forward, music and theater became his most treasured interests. In 1957, he met Violeta Parra, another important Chilean musician. She's the composer of an essential Spanish song called Gracias a la Vida, which we are going to talk about at some point. And it was her that encouraged him to become a professional musician. Then he traveled. He traveled a lot in his youth. He became a committed communist during a visit to the Soviet Union in 1961. He returned to Chile, and he found that the country was experiencing a new wave of peasants and workers' struggles. There was a lot of poverty through that decade in Chile. And while Western pop and rock music have began permeating the country, this gave way to musical groups such as his that rejected this commercial music and instead chose to focus on traditional instruments and traditional songs, giving way to what was known as the new Chilean song, La Nueva Canción Chilena, which dealt with the real life struggles of the people in the country. So a lot of people found themselves identifying with this kind of music. Years later, he traveled to Britain because of his British wife, and he, being an actor, attended theater rehearsals at the Royal Shakespeare Company, where he met some of the British actors, and one of the actresses was meeting a Latin American person for the first time, and she commented something along the lines of, "Oh, how nice to see you. You look so civilized." So then Victor Jara told her that Harold Pinter was well known in Chile and performed in Spanish. And she replied, "Oh, that's lovely. Pinter in Spanish. How priceless." And then he replied to her with a little bit of shade. He said, "It's no more priceless than Chekhov in English," which was a little bit of a touche for this British actress. Now let's focus as to what was going on in Chile while we've gotten a little bit of a portrait of who Victor Jara was. And as I mentioned before, in the 60s, the country of Chile was in major turmoil. At the beginning of the decade, the Valdivia earthquake struck, becoming the most powerful earthquake ever registered, leaving 2 million people homeless. And the poor grew poorer by the day, and labor conditions were subpar. Factory workers were only allowed short breaks to eat, having to return to work immediately thereafter. There was a lot of important protest music being created. Students were becoming more restless and more violent, expressing their disgust as to what was going on with the government. There was violence, there were arrests, there were people getting killed, people going to mini war, people being sent out to fight for their causes. And at the factories, the breaks were indicated by these horns or whistles, which if you watched the Flintstones when you were a kid, you remember that Fred Flintstone is ready to go home when he hears the whistle at the factory and join his family in Bedrock. Yes, that's where they used to live. So in our song, it is that factory horn that indicates the 5 precious minutes during which the characters of the song, Amanda and Manuel, were able to forget about all their troubles and just focus on the love that they felt for one another. Now, with all this information out of the way, let us take a quick look at what the song is about. And I'm going to do that by assuming the position. Hold on just a second. And getting the microphone over here. Headphones, and I think we're good to go. So this is what Te Recuerdo Amanda is about. I'm going to tell you the lyrics in English so that you can meet these two characters, Amanda and Manuel. I remember you, Amanda, the wet pavement, and you rushing to the factory where Manuel used to work. Your broad smile, raindrops in your hair, but nothing really mattered because you were getting together with him. With him, but only for 5 minutes. But life is eternal during those 5 minutes. And then the sound of the whistle, and it's time to go to work. And you, as you're walking, you make everything glow. And those 5 minutes, they make you bloom. And then the second verse begins the same way, only the second half of the verse is different. I remember you, Amanda, the wet pavement, and you rushing to the factory where Manuel used to work. Your broad smile, raindrops in your hair, nothing really mattered because you were getting together with him, who was sent to the mountains, who never hurt a soul, but was sent to the mountains. And in only 5 minutes, it was all over. Then the sound of the horn, and it's back to work. But many didn't make it back. Including Manuel. And then the final verse simply repeats, Te recuerdo, Amanda, I remember you, Amanda. La calle mojada, the wet pavement. Corriendo a la fábrica, running to the factory. Donde trabajaba Manuel, where Manuel used to work. And that is this beautiful song, Te recuerdo, Amanda, that was composed by Victor Jara, but the story doesn't end here. We need to go back to what was happening in Chile at this moment. The song was composed in 1968 when Victor Jara was in London having these Pinter discussions. He was estranged from his family. The struggles in Chile had made it impossible for him to communicate with his wife and made it difficult for him to know how his baby daughter was doing. His daughter's name was Amanda. She was sick, so he was feeling homesick, unable to come back home. The following year, in 1970, Salvador Allende became the 28th president of Chile, and he introduced a series of socialist reforms, including state control of the economy and agrarian reform. He increased salaries and attempted to radically renovate the country. Victor Jara collaborated with him during his campaign, and he was named cultural ambassador for the country. Unfortunately, Allende's reforms were too much for the opposition to handle. The population was polarized. which was exacerbated by a U.S. intervention led by Richard Nixon and his Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, whose influence was decisive for a coup d'etat. In the following year, 1973, Augusto Pinochet, a Chilean general, politician, and dictator, took over. Salvador Allende committed suicide, and Victor Jara was apprehended along with many other sympathizers of his cause. He was arrested and taken to the National Stadium, where he remained for 4 days. His fingers were broken to prevent him from ever making music again. His tongue was removed so that he could never sing again, and he was beaten and tortured to death. It wasn't until 1990 that the government acknowledged the murder. In his memory, 30 years after this horrible incident in 2003, the stadium was renamed with his name. I will leave you with 3 versions of the Recuerdo Amanda to explore, the first one being the one that Victor Jara performed many times. The second one is a version by Joan Baez, which was recorded in her mostly Spanish album, Gracias a la Vida, dedicated to the problems going on in Chile. And the third version that I'm going to leave with you is by a Spanish group called Presents Implicados from their 1999 version, 1999 album Versión Original. I love the original version by Victor Jara. The version by Joan Baez I include only because it's representative of the period. I don't like the way that version of the song ends, because this is a very sad song, and she ends it in a major key by singing Manuel, 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 as though she was doing like arpeggios or something. So I'm not so crazy about her ending. So Joan Baez's version is absolutely beautiful up until the last 20 seconds. Presuntos Implicados, their version is absolutely breathtaking. And if you haven't had enough about this important song and these important events that transpired in Cuba, I will have you know that there is a gloriously important documentary you can watch on Netflix, and this is called Massacre at the Stadium. Massacre at the Stadium takes over what happens after Victor Jara is killed. You see, his wife, Joan Jara, spent the last 40 years fighting the government to bring clarity and closure to this event. So the documentary talks and connects with her. She's now over 90 years of age, and she's still alive, and she's still mourning the passing of her beloved husband. We will never know what life would have been if we had been able to enjoy his art for many more years. You know, he was killed horribly, and this is yet one of these things that has yet to be resolved by the Chilean government, to the extent that we will have some tranquility in knowing exactly what happened. And that, my friends, is my little tribute to this beautiful song, to this beautiful composer, and to this beautiful music that I totally recommend everybody to watch. And this, of course, brings us to the closure of today's show. As always, I am grateful for your company. Let me take a quick last minute look at your comments just to see what you are thinking about. Let's see. Brian loves the Pinter and Chekhov references. I think they are absolutely precious. Love your cock t-shirt. I love my cock t-shirt. It came from a beautiful place in Nayarit called Entre Amigos. It's a community center. Let's see what else. I have an old voice, Brian. I don't sing anymore, but thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. Good for you, Michael. This is one that you want to learn, and it's just as important as Bésame Mucho, only very, very different. What else? What else? Well, if I touched your soul, that is a good thing. That's the general intention. We try to do a little bit of everything here: predict the weather, predict the COVID guidelines, sing a little bit, play the piano, and whatever it takes to keep you entertained here in Coffee and Headlines. So, with that said, we are ready to get going. I appreciate your company as always. I hope you'll have a really, really wonderful Tuesday. Tomorrow, we come back with more news and headlines and this, that, and the other. As you know, our poll about live performances is out. So, please feel free to take it, join it, share it, and share your comments. We will be looking at the results as we move forward through the week. Between now and then, stay kind, stay calm, stay happy, stay in touch, stay healthy, and take good care of yourselves and your loved ones. I will see you again soon.